Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So finally we are doing part 3 of my most anticipated reads for 2024. This has been a 3-part series, so if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, definitely check those out. They're linked down below. But these videos are pretty long, so I'm just going to dive right in and go through. I have 10 more books this time. 3 are just kind of book announcements. I don't really have summaries for them yet. I'm going to keep those kind of towards the end. And then I have one book at the very, very end that's kind of like horror adjacent. But I wanted to keep it in this list because I'm very, very excited for it. So as I've been saying, pretty much for this series, the order doesn't really matter. It's just kind of when I found out about the books. It's not my rankings or chronological. It's just books I really want to read by authors I'm interested in. So let's dive in. First up, we have Midwestern Gothic by Scott Thomas. This will be coming out on April 30th. Scott Thomas wrote Kill Creek. I really enjoyed that book. It was a very, very meta, self-aware look at the horror lit genre as a whole. So I'm interested to see what he is going to be doing, especially with an interesting title called Midwestern Gothic. We're going to read the summary real quick. Close your eyes. Picture open plains, wheat stalks swaying gently in the wind. Picture the quaint main street of a one-stoplight town. Picture endless summers on sunny, tranquil lakes. With 4 provocative novellas, Kill Creek author and Kansas native Scott Thomas takes a hatchet to the idyllic tropes of the American heartland. In The Door in the Field, Thomas follows a quarrelsome construction worker named Raylan Allen, whose bad day becomes a far worse night when drinks at an off-the-books establishment deep in the woods set Ray down an unforeseeably bloody path. In The Boy in the Woods, Thomas follows young Eddie Reacher, who lingers a day too long at summer camp as unholy terror creeps in. Something evil has infected the counselors, and Eddie will have to do everything he can, even kill, if he hopes to survive the night. In One Half of a Child's Face, Thomas follows the recently divorced Sienna Franklin. Spying on her daughter and ex-husband, she notices an odd painting hanging on the wall of an adjacent apartment. Over the course of the next few days, Sienna will watch with growing horror as the children in the apartment building begin to gather before the painting, as if called to it. And in Wear Your Secret Like a Stone, Thomas follows Tara Bright, whose low-stakes job at the Blantonville Buy Bigs superstore takes a turn when a mysterious customer complains about her book pick for the Halloween display. It soon becomes clear that the pagan totem within the pages of the book bears a remarkable resemblance to a forgotten artifact from Blantonville's history and speaks to the darkness of Tara's own past. With this collection, Thomas digs his hands into the soil of the American heartland and establishes himself as the master of Midwestern Gothic. So I really hope that this is going to be kind of like Goblin by Josh Malerman, where it is stories that are separate but still sort of tied together. I love when an author does that with an anthology. It makes it a little bit more easy for me to read. Anthology is probably the wrong word, but like a novella collection. I'm pretty picky when it comes to anthologies and short story collections. But I'm definitely interested in this. I did really enjoy Kill Creek, and I really like that this is going to be a weird kind of Midwestern setting. I feel like we don't see that a lot in horror, so very, very stoked for that. Okay, next up, I had to include this here. This is going to be another short story collection, but it is by Stephen King, and this is You Like It Darker, which will be out on May 21st. And it says, from legendary storyteller and master of short fiction, Stephen King comes an extraordinary new collection of 12 short stories, many never before published, and some of his best ever. You like it darker? Fine, so do I, writes Stephen King in the afterword of this magnificent new collection of 12 stories that delve into the darker part of life, both metaphorical and literal. King has, for half a century, been a master of the form, and these stories about fate, mortality, luck, and the folds in reality where anything can happen are as rich and riveting as his novels, both weighty in theme and a huge pleasure to read. King writes to feel the exhilaration of leaving ordinary day-to-day life behind, and in You Like It Darker, readers will feel that exhilaration too, again and again. 2 talented bastards exploring the long-hidden secret of how the eponymous gentleman got their skills. I think that's a typo. I think it's supposed to say in. And then it says, in Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream, a brief and unprecedented psychic flash upends dozens of lives. Danny's most catastrophically. In Rattlesnakes, a sequel to Cujo, okay, a grieving widower travels to Florida for respite, and instead receives an unexpected inheritance with major strings attached. In The Dreamers, a taciturn Vietnam vet answers a job ad and learns that there are some concerns of the universe best left unexplored. The Answer Man asks if prescience is good luck or bad, and reminds us that a life marked by unbearable tragedy can still be meaningful. King's ability to surprise, amaze, and bring us both terror and solace remains unsurpassed. Each of these stories holds its own thrills, joys, and mysteries. Each feels iconic. You like it darker? You got it. Okay, interesting. Definitely interesting to see that there is going to be a sequel to Cujo. I didn't like that book. It's one of the few Stephen King books I really, really didn't like. And I'm interested to see when all of these stories were written. I wonder if they were only ever published in magazines and never put in a book or collection form before. If they were written like years ago or all very recently, or if some have just been written for this collection. So hopefully I will get to that at some point. I still have to read like Holly, and Billy Summers. I'm still pretty backed up on my catching up with my Stephen King reads, just because I definitely prefer like 70s and 80s King to some of his newer works. So I always am hesitant to read the newer works because they tend to not always work for me the way that his older pieces do. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Speaking of Goblin, next up I have Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman, which will be out on June 25th of 2024. And its blurb says, a chilling horror novel about a haunting told from the perspective of a young girl whose troubled family is targeted by an entity she calls Other Mommy. From the New York Times bestselling author of Bird Box. To 8-year-old Bella, her family is her world. There's Mommy, Dado, and Grandma Ruth. But there is also Other Mommy, a malevolent entity who asks her, can I go inside your heart? When horrifying incidents around the house signal that Other Mommy is growing tired of asking Bella the same question over and over, Bella understands that unless she says yes, soon her family must pay. Other Mommy is getting restless, stronger, bolder. Only the bonds of family can keep Bella safe, but other incidents show cracks in her parents' marriage. The safety Bella relies on is on the brink of unraveling, but Other Mommy needs an answer. Incidents Around the House is a chilling, wholly unique tale of true horror told by the child Bella, a story about a family as haunted as their home. Okay, so two things to note. One, this sounds painfully like Coraline, which I believe is a masterpiece. Even like Other Mommy, weird. Two, the name Bella is actually spelled B-E-L-A, which I believe is pronounced Bela, like Bela Lugosi. So maybe Other Mommy's a vampire? I don't know. Josh Malerman's one of those authors that I tend to pick up his books when something speaks to me. I really didn't love Bird Box, but I had a lot of fun with Goblin. So I'm always kind of iffy on his stuff, but I still want to read some of his works, and a haunted house story is definitely something I tend to gravitate towards, so definitely will be reading that. Okay, next up, we have another Stephen Graham Jones release. I talked about his upcoming sequel, or third conclusion of his Indian Lake trilogy in one of my earlier videos. But on July 16th, he's also going to be releasing a 384-page book called I Was a Teenage Slasher. So we are getting 2 releases from Stephen Graham Jones this year. And there's not too much on this one, but it says, from New York Times bestselling author, writer Stephen Graham Jones comes a classic slasher story with a twist. Perfect for fans of Riley Sager and Grady Hendrick. 1989, La Mesa, Texas. A small West Texas town driven by oil and cotton, and a place where everyone knows everyone else's business. So it goes for Tolly Driver, a good kid with more potential than application, 17 and about to be cursed to kill for revenge. Here Stephen Graham Jones explores the Texas he grew up in, the unfairness of being on the outside, through the slasher horror he lives, but from the perspective of the killer. Tolly writing his own autobiography. Find yourself rooting for a killer in this summer teen movie of a novel-gone, full blood-curdling tragic. Okay. I'm probably going to do a whole video on this at some point, but Stephen Graham Jones is one of those authors I just typically do not like. I really didn't like The Only Good Indians. I really didn't like Mongrels. I really didn't like Night of the Mannequins. And yet I love My Heart is a Chainsaw. And since this is also going to be told through the perspective of what seems like a teenager, it's going to be very slasher focused. As long as it's more in line with the writing style he's been doing for My Heart is a Chainsaw, I will probably be reading this. I'm currently reading Don't Fear the Reaper, which is the sequel to My Heart is a Chainsaw. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm about a quarter of the way through, so maybe soon Stephen Graham Jones will change my mind about him as an author, but I do like his love for slashers, and I like that this is going to be in the 80s. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, next up. And this is probably one of the books I'm most excited for, because this is just one of those authors that whenever he has a new release, I just have to buy it. He always has really interesting concepts. It's always humorous and horrific at the same time. And this is Grady Hendrick's latest novel, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. This is coming out on July 4th, 2024. There's very, very little information on it. There's an interview that I found on someone's blog, so I'm just going to read some of what it says. Because they interviewed Grady Hendrick and have a little bit of insight on what this book is going to be, because Goodreads doesn't have anything up yet. So it says, set in 1970 at a home for unwed mothers in Florida, this book follows 5 pregnant teenage girls as they wait out the last 3 months of their pregnancy in seclusion, hoping to have their babies, surrender them for adoption, and return to their regular lives. They must be hidden away from the public. Their communications are monitored, and they're not even allowed to share their real names with each other. Each girl has a betrayal in her recent past that brought her here. Whether it's being ditched by her married lover, parents breaking up her planned marriage to a boyfriend they think is inappropriate, or I'm gonna bleep that out because this is YouTube. Then there's Holly, barely 13 years old and enormously pregnant, who doesn't speak at all. In the pressure cooker of her home, the girls begin to believe that the house is haunted, and they soon realize that most of the supernatural activity revolves around Holly. One by one, they reach their due dates and come back from the hospital traumatized, prompting the remaining girls to vow that they won't give up their babies, which sets them against the women who run the home and who are determined to get them to surrender their babies. As the war between the girls and their social workers intensifies, it becomes very clear that the house isn't haunted. Holly is. The father of her baby may not be human, and soon the house's worst nightmare is going to come true as he shows up to cause a kind of trouble few people have seen and survived. And then this I found on agentselainebenisti.com, so just so you guys know that that's there. That's the only information I have on that book right now. So, again, there's nothing on his website. There's no summary on Goodreads, nothing I could find on Amazon. So that is what it is. Very excited that Grady Hendrick is doing like another period piece set in the 70s. I love when he does different time frames. Again, My Best Friend's Exorcism, which is set in the 80s, is still my favorite thing that he's ever written. Love that he's doing another southern setting. It'll be cool to see a Florida setting versus like a South Carolina setting from him. So very, very excited for that. Always, always love when Grady Hendrick has a new release. Even if the books don't work for me, he's just such a unique voice in the horror genre. So I always have fun with his stuff. Okay, next up. I don't know if I have a date for this yet. But this is Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates. This was originally released in July of 2014, exclusively in ebook form, back when Darcy Coates was self-publishing all of her work. But the Wild Rumpus Publications will be putting it into print this year. It is available for pre-order at the moment. Interesting that she is not working with Poison Pen Press. I know that they initially launched Darcy Coates' like print fame for the horror genre. But yes, she will be releasing Ghost Camera finally for print sometime this year. And it says, a small number of cameras have the ability to capture ghosts on film. This gift comes at a steep price. The ghosts are resentful and hungry, and the cameras offer them a rare chance to reach their favorite prey, humans. Janine didn't know any of this when she found an abandoned Polaroid camera in a lighthouse. At first, she assumes the ghostly shapes in the photos are a glitch or a prank. But then the spirits begin to hunt her down, and she's forced into a deadly race to free herself from the camera's curse. Very fun. This is a really short one. I think it's only 118 pages. But I love Darcy Coates. She's one of my go-to authors. I think her work speaks for itself, that she was able to get so many books self-published and create such a great career before any of her books even hit print. So definitely interested to see something that she wrote 10 years ago, back when she was still kind of this fledgling author. I think that'll be really, really fun. Okay, so these next 3 books I have little to no information on. I pretty much have author names and release dates. But we will be getting another novel from Johnny Compton, who is the author who wrote The Spite House. That was his debut novel this year. I didn't love that novel, but I loved a lot of Johnny Compton's ideas in it, and I kind of really enjoyed his voice, so I'm really, really excited to see what other work he's going to have for us in the future, and as he kind of refines his skill, to see how he elevates, and to see how he kind of elevates himself. So this is called Devils Kill Devils and it will be out on September 24th through Tor Nightfire. Unfortunately, that is literally all of the information that I have on this book so far, but definitely want to be on the lookout for it because I was so impressed with the debut release that was Spite House, and I think he's going to have a lot of potential. This will also be a Tor Nightfire release, and we're going to be getting another novel by Bram. This is called Evil in Me, and it will be out on October 15th of 2024. Bram is an author I've been following for a while. He's primarily an artist, but he broke out into the horror world when he wrote The Child Thief. I have not read that yet. It's his reimagining of Peter Pan. But I did read Krampus, which is his kind of spin on the like Austrian folklore of the Yule Lord Krampus, which he just kind of put a lot of different folklore concepts together that don't actually normally go together. Hence, you know, Austrian Yule Lord Krampus. Like there was a lot there. Enjoyable book, not my favorite. And then he had Slewfoot, which I believe came out 2 years ago, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I know a lot of people really, really loved it. The illustrations in it were beautiful. But Bram is this kind of eclectic, otherworldly author who has really unique concepts and takes things that we as an audience tend to be very, very familiar with and then completely restylizes them. So definitely interested to see what Evil in Me is going to be about. I'll definitely be picking it up, especially because the illustrations I'm sure are going to be gorgeous. And I think his stuff is worth reading, even though I'm not always the biggest fan of what he writes. So yeah, definitely going to be on the lookout for that. We then also have, and I don't think we have a actual date yet, but this will be coming out in fall 2024 through Cemetery Dance Publications. LP Hernandez will be releasing a second book this year, and this is called No Gods, Only Chaos. And I believe it says a dark collection of speculative fiction. As I said, I believe in my last video, LP Hernandez wrote Stargazers, and I really, really liked that novella. I thought it was really strong for a debut release. He has another, like, full-length book coming out earlier in the year. Again, I don't always love collections, but when they're by authors that I tend to enjoy, I will be more than likely to pick them up. So definitely looking out for that. And then last but not least, this was actually on my most anticipated releases for 2023 list, but it got pushed back to this year. And this is going to be the third book in the X-Hex series. It is called The Wedding Witch by Aaron Sterling. This will also be coming out on October 15th. If you have not read the X-Hex or the Kiss Curse or heard me talk about this series, this is a witchy, Halloween-y, horror-adjacent romance series. I do not read romance novels. It's like just not my thing. It's not something I'm into. But the X-Hex I got in a book box. I got it in Unplugged. I read it. It was so funny. It was like reading Sex and the City and Halloween Town as one. And then I read The Kiss Curse, the sequel, because I had so much fun with the first one, and it was even stronger. So these are just fun, quirky stories about witches. Like, if you've seen Charmed, you'll probably really, really enjoy this series. And I just think they're so fun. I read them a lot as palate cleansers between some of my more heavy reads, but I really, really love the world that they are set in, and I just, every single time I read about the families within these stories, I just have an absolute blast. They are so weird and dysfunctional and relatable, and at the same time there's ghosts and witches and demons and curses, and it's just fantastic. So I'm going to read the premise for this. Bowen Penhallow has always been a loner, studying dark and ancient magic on a mountaintop in Wales. He prefers it that way. But when his friend Colin, who happens to be a ghost, asks him to attend a Yuletide wedding at a grand estate deep in the Welsh countryside, Bowen reluctantly agrees. Tamsin Bly is not a witch, but she makes her living off of them. As a procurer and seller of magical items, Tamsin's business is not always above board, but she's been trying to fix that, mostly. Bowen is an occasional customer, as well as the star of several of Tamsin's dirtiest dreams. But she's been around enough witches to know that, as a human, getting involved with one is not the smartest idea. She's finagled an invite to the witchy wedding of the century in the hopes of finally making a score big enough to retire. Just one priceless magical artifact from Tywell House would set her up for life. But Tamsin isn't the only one sneaking about in Tywell House. And the mix of a very strong spell combined with a wedding mishap transport Bowen and Tamsin into Tywell House's past, to the Yuletide celebration of 1958. As Bowen and Tamsin work together to get back to the present, they must also face off with the origins of Tywell House's haunting, the suspicions of their fellow witches, and the fact that somewhere between the mistletoe and the bonfire, they might be falling in love. Again, this is definitely not something that I would typically read on my channel. Again, I don't usually love series, but this world is just so fun. And every now and then, I just need something fun and lighthearted and cute to kind of break up all of the disturbing, terrifying concepts that I read on like a daily basis. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. I'm sure it's not most people's cup of tea, but I really do enjoy the kind of Halloween Town, charmed, the 90s Sabrina the Teenage Witch vibes that I get when I read this series, and it's just wonderful and lovely, and I hope she keeps writing them because they don't always feel like a series to me. They kind of feel almost like the gothy version of Bridgerton, where you can kind of just focus on one couple every single story or season or book, however you want to call it. So yes, very, very excited for that. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.